story time. So as you may recall, there was a great ceremony, and many of the dreaming women thought that at the great ceremony the truth would finally be revealed. But the great ceremony happened and the truth was not revealed. And instead, a person was placed into the seat who had not been chosen by the people. And the people were outraged, saddened, confused. And many people didn't know what to do, and even some of the dreaming women were confused, for hadn't we all gotten the same information? Hadn't we all gotten that, in fact, the Lotus Queen would be seated in the proper seat when the time came? But what we didn't realize is that we didn't quite have the timing wrong, because prophecies are like that. Prophecies don't always match with our expectations, our logical expectations for when things should happen. And so the dreaming women reviewed everything they had received, and what they remembered receiving was this. They remembered being told that there would be a long period of FAFO where certain people had to come to certain realizations about the person, the naked emperor, who they had supported. And these people had to realize that in fact the emperor had no clothes. And it wasn't until enough people recognized this that it would be safe for the Lotus Queen to take her seat. And everybody assumed that the day of the great ceremony would be the appropriate day for that, but no, there wasn't enough FAFO. And so from the day of the great ceremony for the next weeks, more and more bad things kept happening, more and more erosions and destructions of the councils that were meant to govern the land, more and more destruction of the rules that had always ruled over the land. And the seven thieves, being thieves, did what thieves do. They began to loot the treasury of the government. They began to steal all the gold from the realm. They began to steal money even from the pockets of the very people themselves. And they began to require all of the people who worked hard to stop working. They began to take away all of their jobs so that people were left without resources, without things to do, and just wandering confused in the streets. And they did all this while telling fancy lies, claiming that they were trying to do good for their realm, that they were trying to stamp out things in their realm, that they were trying to disclose problems in the realm. And although the decisions they were making were hurting lots of people, there were still a small number of people who tried to hold on and believe that the emperor really did have clothes, even though there was no evidence to suggest that he did. And meanwhile, all of the other people began to come together in large and small ways, gathering, forming community. Some became very active, taking to the streets. They began to gather in all of the big villages where they had the large dome-shaped halls, and they began to gather on a regular basis. And the dreaming women got together in large and small ways as well, forming small councils and covens and large councils. And they asked their guides, when will we be free? When will all of this end? When will this chaos end? We want answers. We want timelines. We want to know the people are suffering. And the guides just kept saying, but we already told you that there has to be a FAFO. There has to be this finding out process, that people need to understand what's really going on. Truths have to be revealed. Things have to be uncovered. Secrets have to be told. People have to be seen for who they really are. And as the days went on, there were more and more secrets that were uncovered, and there were more and more terrible deeds that were done, and there was more and more money stolen by the seven thieves, more and more money going into their pockets as they fleeced the people of the land. And so there were many groups of people who were upset. There were the veterans, the ones who had fought for the realm, who were now being denied their duly earned income. There were also the people who were working for the realm, who had worked their whole lives as public servants, who were now being released and removed and put out into the street with no salaries. They were upset. And there were people who were sick and disabled. There were people who were old, who depended upon their pensions that came from the realm, pensions they had paid into their whole life, and they were being removed from them. And so they were upset, and the children of these people, the children of the old people, and the children and the relatives of the sick people and the disabled people were also upset. And then too, the seven thieves were going after all of the people of a certain shade, and they were going after the women, and they were going after all kinds of groups of people. Anyone who didn't look like them was being targeted, and so all of those groups were also upset. And then too, the friends of all those groups were upset. All of the allies, all of the people who could look and see what was wrong when they saw what was wrong, who could easily identify a behavior that was immoral, regardless of political explanation. And all of the doctors and the healers and the healthcare workers were upset, for there were decisions being made by the realm that was jeopardizing the health of every single person in the realm because of the threat of public health crises. But the FAFO was slow and hard. It just kept rolling over different groups of people, and other people kept waiting and hoping and praying that it wasn't going to reach them. And so there was more FAFO that always had to happen. There were more and more people that had to find out. And finally, after a few weeks, and the third week of the second month of the year, it came out that finally the Naked Emperor was revealing himself truly as the Naked Dictator. That the whispers that had been whispered for so long about his true desire for absolute domination, about his true desire to remove all people input into the realm, was actually not just a rumor, but truth. And so whereas in the past all of the people had a say in how they were governed, and all of them put in tickets, and all of them participated in choosing jousters to win jousts, at this point it became clear that the Naked Dictator wanted to end all that and wanted to make all the decisions by himself, just him and his merry band of thieves and nobody else. And it was at this point, on this 20th day of the second month, that finally the rulers, the people who made decisions, the people who argued and created the laws of the land, the people who were in charge of the purse, who were in charge of spending money to take care of the land, those people finally realized, oh, us? Us too? He wants to get rid of us too? And they realized that the FAFO had come to them, the steamroller had come their way, that this Naked Dictator planned to steamroll all over every legislator in the land, to remove all laws, to remove all lawmakers. And they finally realized, oh, he's going to take away our power too. And the Dreaming Women had tried to warn them for many, many weeks and months. They had tried to warn people that the goal of this Naked Emperor and his seven thieves, the Star Boy and Rasputin, Bozo and all of the others, Theos, that their goal was always absolute control of the realm. Their goal was always to remove the people from any decision making. Their goal was always to take power away from anyone and everyone who was not a part of the Merry Band of Thieves. But as the guides had foretold, the FAFO needed to happen. We needed to go through some things, and people needed to realize what the true agenda was. And until they realized what the true agenda was, they weren't going to stop him. But the more of these terrible things that happened, the closer the realm came to a resolution. Things were going to get much worse before they got much better. But they could only get so much worse before they would have to get better. For at a certain point, there was going to be a turning point where enough people realized what was going on and decided to say no more. But by the time this happened, a lot of things would be revealed about the corruption in the land and all of the problems that needed to be fixed. And this was, they said, necessary so that we could build something new, something better, something fair and just. And the people were ready for this rebuilding. We were ready.